The following is a presentation of the Healthcare Facilities Network.
Hello and welcome to the Healthcare Facilities Network. I am your host, Peter Martin, Vice President of Business Development for CREF, with offices in Boston, Mass, Dallas, Texas, Salt Lake City, Utah, and down in the same state in which my guest is located, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. More info on CREF, go to cref.com.
If you can train people to do the job, you're going to have long-term employees, okay? Especially if you provide some of those resources to support them. Maybe you help provide some resources for them to go get that certification that they need.
I would like to welcome today's guest, David Trask, National Director, ARC Facilities. David, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Peter.
David, in addition to being National Director for ARC Facilities, David also has a podcast, and maybe you've heard his podcast, maybe you're subscribed to his podcast. David, tell us a bit about your podcast.
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago, I started the podcast as Facility Voices, and it's basically a platform for facilities directors, maintenance teams to share their stories. I always say that no one ever asks the facilities guys and gals on the team behind the curtain what they do. And they're so open. They've been fantastic. And they're sharing everything from how they deal with a problem to how they work with leadership, how they work with finance, how they've addressed specific problems that everybody faces. And I love the fact that they share so many different key little takeaways. I always say it's those little nuggets that they can walk away from an episode and put into practice at their facilities.
Recently spoke with Mike Hatton, the new ASHI president. We spoke with Ryan Cannella, who works for Aramark, but he's a long-term director of FM. And David, now you as national director. While you were talking, it hit me, all three of you, and I think it is really what makes the profession or the discipline unique. You come at it with great passion. Like you can hear it like visually as you're talking, the words you're using. And I think it's what makes people who are good in this profession, it can be a real differentiator, is that passion that you feel for what you do.
I love it. I cannot stress that enough. I love the industry. I love that people are so open. I always say in facilities, they're not in competition with each other. It's not a sales environment. They're not competing against each other. They're trying to operate the business. They're trying to operate the buildings and make sure everything is running efficiently and safe and healthy. And they also don't want to reinvent a wheel. So they're so open about sharing how they're doing it. And I love that it is very much so a community of just salt of the earth people. They're out there trying to figure out how to do things, and they're so open about sharing it. And I love that. It is that community feel, and I love to be a part of that.
So I know that we ran into each other. You were moderator for a panel at the Florida Healthcare Engineers in November. And I know that you're going to moderate another panel in June at the Florida Healthcare Engineers, which I'm actually very jealous about. Now, do you know, and I'm not meaning to put you on the spot, have you met Josh Morgerman yet? Because he's part of your panel, right?
I met him
hurricane
at the
guy.
show. Yeah.
Okay.
I met him at the show. Right?
Yeah. So I'm a weather nerd. I love all things weather. And so Josh, who's keynoting, I think in June, he's a hurricane chaser. Mm-hmm. And so he gets into the eyes of the hurricane and measures them scientifically. It's fascinating. I follow him on Twitter, especially when and he'll travel the world. He'll go to Taiwan. He'll go to the typhoons in the Pacific, the Gulf, all over. And so I'm actually looking forward to going in June. And you're hosting, as I said, another panel. And I think, is your panel about hurricanes and natural disasters?
Yeah, it is. And I actually went around, as you mentioned, I live in Florida. So about a year ago, not quite a year ago, before hurricane season, I actually went around to our clients. I met with multiple different clients, all different industries. So I met with, and even public utilities. So I went to a public utility up in Jacksonville, Florida. I met with a university down in the South Florida market. I met with a municipality, and I asked them, what do you do? What do you do to prep for hurricanes? What are the things that you put in place? And more importantly, what are those lessons learned? And what did you do to tweak your program from those events that have happened in the past? And like I said, this industry, they're so open. And I heard some things that shocked me, some things that surprised me. And, unfortunately, in the Southeast, we are impacted by hurricanes every year, tropical storms, hurricanes, other natural events. And the things that I heard and the things that they shared ranged from water barrier systems that didn't exist 5 years ago. Other things like managing where the assets are. I mean, I even met with a tribal council member, and he was telling me that, they didn't realize, some of the things even addressed with water, like it has to be stored at a certain temperature. It's only good for a certain amount of time. And even I didn't know that there was a 10-year or even 100-year water product that's out there. That how would I know that? But it's a shelf life of 100 years. So those types of things, they were so open about sharing, that they've got these different things in place, and what does that mean to better serve the community and their employees as well. And that's part of what we're going to be sharing at that panel, is those best practices, some of the things that they learned for the betterment of those attendees.
Shelf life of 100 years. That I'm just, like, think about that. That outlives all of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, 100 years.
Yeah.
Shelf life for water. How much water in the what is it in?
Well, they had pallets of boxed water. So it was boxes of water, pallets of them. And again, they're gonna cycle through that as they need it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not just the water. It's the, during the last hurricanes that we had last year, I saw a hospital down in the West Coast, or the West Coast of Florida, in the Gulf side, that had these water barriers that essentially it looked like a wall. Okay. The guy's standing behind a wall, and there's 4 feet of water on the other side of this wall, and he's perfectly dry.
I saw that on Twitter. What that was an amazing visual.
Yeah.
What hospital was that? Because I don't remember.
I don't remember the exact hospital. It was one down in the Tampa market. But again, I've never seen that. So it's those types of things that, again, 5 years ago, you would have never seen that on Twitter or anywhere. Right. And I saw it on Twitter as well and reached out. So again, I think it's interesting how facilities teams are finding those types of resources to help them with those types of events. And
you're right. Kind of the reason I went down the Florida healthcare engineers avenue is when you were talking about how the hospitals really aren't in competition with each other. And I was talking to Adam Mail down there, Memorial Healthcare, and I had him on the facilities network when he was president of the engineers. And, he said that he's like, even when it comes to trying to help help another hospital find people, he's like, I'll try to help. If you have a director role, I'll try to help you fill it, because again, it's such a small community and you're interacting with people all the time. So you try to help them because you're going to need help at some point. And it is, I think it's one of the things that makes this world a little bit unique, is they all feel each other's pain and they kind of know what it's like. So therefore they try to assist when they can. They share resources and information. It's not a competitor. They're there to help you.
Well, and I think that's why so many of these are active. These people in facilities are so active at these regional conferences as well, is sure, they walk the show floor to see the vendors and things like that, but they're walking the show floor to see what's new too.
Yeah.
And that's why they attend these sessions at the different shows, is to hear things that they may not be doing or they didn't even know existed. And it's all about education. It's understanding, listen, I don't know what I don't know. And I go to these shows to find out, some of those little things that I may not even have been aware of. And I attend shows myself, and I go to the education sessions, and listen, and I love to learn from, I thirst for that knowledge of the new things, the other things that are out there. And I hear something in every session, and it's sometimes you hear something that's just slightly different, but that can make all the difference in the world to another organization. And I joke that I have in my backpack that I carry on the planes, I have a stack of business cards from all different companies that do all different kinds of things, because I'm always asked, hey, do you know somebody who does X? Well, you know what? I don't know them, but I saw them at a show. Here, call this guy, and that's invaluable, because you want to be that resource. But it's not just me being your resource. The facilities guys and gals that I see at these shows, they're a resource for each other. But again, it's that community.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. So you do travel quite a bit. You have a great perspective on kind of what's going on. You're actually just back from Hawaii, correct? Did you get back from Hawaii last week? If I'm reading LinkedIn correctly.
I am. It's a labor of love, but people think that, oh my goodness, you're in Hawaii. Well, yeah, I'm working in 6 hospitals in Hawaii. So you go to work and it's dark, and you come to the hotel and it's dark. So it's not all glamorous, but at the same time, again, it's hospitals on remote islands. I was on 3 different islands over basically a week and a half, and working at some rural hospitals over there, and mapping out shutoff valves and all their isolation valves at some different hospitals over there.
So I have to imagine, even on Hawaii, that they feel the same pain relative to attracting candidates, even maybe more acutely in an island world.
They do. They've got, it can be a challenge, obviously, because they're literally on an island. But they face the same things that anybody does on the mainland. The challenge is trying to find qualified people that can fill a void. That may be an electrician, a plumber, an HVAC tech. Their challenge is, because of the location, it can be hard to find, because you've got a smaller labor pool on island. It's not that they're less qualified, it's just a smaller labor pool.
Right.
So they are trying to pull people from the mainland. But I look at it from the standpoint is they're no different than somebody in South Dakota. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's just geography and population. There's not a huge population in the Dakotas. There's not a huge population in Montana, as compared to, Orlando or New York or Chicago or LA, where there's just a lot of people. There are challenges with that. There are those geographical challenges. There's other challenges too with resources, getting people. It's not just about getting people, it's also about getting materials there. So having those locations so remote can be a challenge across the board. Yeah.
I remember prior to joining CREF, when I was doing the recruiting at Gosselin Martin Associates, we did a recruitment for a hospital on the Virgin Islands, St. John's. And this is before they got hammered by a hurricane, 3 years ago, and they lost the whole building. So this was prior to that. But I remember the hospital CEO telling me, and I'm sure it's the same in Hawaii. He's like, listen, it sounds beautiful, but it's like after 6 months, when you've seen the beach every day and it's been bright and sunny every day, you kind of get sick of it. So he's like, whoever we recruit here, you got to tell them it's not, it's not like going to everybody say, oh, you can go to the beach all the time. But after a while, it just becomes kind of like anything else, you're used to it. So he's like, if they're coming just for the beach, it's going to get old.
Well, it's different. I mean, Hawaii is a little bit different because you can bounce between the different islands. That's the thing I
Yeah.
loved about Hawaii is, you're 30 minutes, 40 minutes from another island, which is can be completely different.
Yeah.
The islands can be so different. I was on the Big Island, then I was on Oahu, and then I actually went to Molokai, which is a very small island. I think the population of Molokai is only like 8,000 people. Um,
Yeah.
Very rural, but they're all different. But you are right. I mean, there's only so far you can go. I mean, my gosh, some of the islands, you jump in a car 20 minutes, you're on the other side of the island, but at the same time, the people there, the culture is just, to me, it's amazing. They are
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful people. Just the culture is just phenomenal. And I tell you, I send pictures back to my family while I'm there, and you cannot describe the beauty. A photo doesn't do it any justice. I always say in Hawaii, everything glows. It's like everything just glows, and you will see 20 rainbows a day, in that time of year. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, man, we went there on our honeymoon long ago, and I was like, I'd love to get back. I just loved it. So let's come back to the mainland. I know you don't like to fly because I read a LinkedIn post, right? That not of the little puddle jumpers that go island to
Yeah.
islands.
Yeah. Little planes, that's a little different. Yeah, I like the
I
bigger
agree.
ones, but yeah, I was
Yeah,
on some
you
top
better, right?
planes.
You fly enough.
Oh my goodness, yeah. My posts on LinkedIn, the life through an airplane window, the struggle's real.
Yeah. So let's go to a different struggle. When we talked 2 years ago, and actually I went back to listen to the podcast we did. It was posted on January 24th, I think, 2023. And three themes that we talked about. And I'm wondering, kind of your report card, what have you seen in the 2 years, and are they still issues? You were talking about generational differences was something that you would see at different organizations, old buildings, and the demand that old buildings, and then the labor market, people retiring and nobody coming in through the trades, no younger people coming in. So generational differences, old buildings, and the labor market. How are we 2 years later in those three areas?
Buildings are older. The buildings are all older. Equipment is older. And but the labor market is this, honestly, it's the same. I think a lot more people have left the market, whether they've retired, whether they've seen some reductions in staff. I've seen that quite a bit. I think with regards to the younger folks moving into the industry, there is and I post on LinkedIn about this all the time, on social. The trades are an underserved market. They truly are. I think there was actually a funny video I saw the other day, and people, the listeners may have heard this, where someone walks up. This guy has a whole program on this. He walks up to people who are getting in a really fancy car, a Bentley or a Mercedes or a whatever, a Ferrari, and he says, "What do you do for a living?" And there was a guy that was in the car. He says, "I'm a plumber." And he says, "What? You're a plumber?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm a plumber." And he said, well, how much did you make last year? And he said, "I made $2.x million last year." And he said, "As a plumber?" He said, "Yeah, I started out as a plumber, and then I opened up my own plumbing company. And now I have X number of offices in this particular area." That is what I think needs to be screamed from the rooftops. Okay. If you're a tradesperson, it always used to be looked down upon, a blue collar job where you're out there, you're in the mud, you're fixing the plumbing, you're fixing the electric, you're running lines, you're chasing HVAC chases, you're working on a unit, whatever the case may be. There's a shift. Okay, because there is such a need right now. If you're a plumber, you're a tradesperson, you can get a job anywhere. Okay, that's no different than it was a year ago. But I think now advocates, whether it's the Mike Rose of the world, whether there's the other people that are out there screaming this from the rooftops, like I do literally every day. I think you're starting to see a shift, and I think it's a positive shift for the market. The trades are such an underserved community, for lack of a better term. But I think even at the high school level, my daughter's in high school. She's a junior, and they have a trades program. They actually have it at school. They have an engineering program in her high school. That's phenomenal. Okay,
Yeah.
and I think where we're going to see a shift is going to be the shattering of that misconception that it's just a job. It's a career.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. I think there has been a subtle shift in the last year or so, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
It really is. That I was amazed. I'll occasionally talk to folks down at the maritime academies, the maritime colleges, because those are great. Those are great places to get that next generation. The problem is, as always, is kind of salaries and healthcare not paying as much. But I was amazed, and I've said this before on the Healthcare Facilities Network. The folks at Mass Maritime were telling me that even down to 7th and 8th grade now, there's kind of competition to put these kids, or to not put them on a career path, but outline a career path. I'm like, when I was I don't know about you, in 7th grade, I'm not looking at a career path. I mean, I just wanted to go to recess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like the competition is acute.
It is. And I think, I have a little different perspective when I think about trades, or I think about going to a 4-year school versus going to a trade school. Okay. I look at it a little bit differently. I look at it as, why is a trade school looked as a lesser program than a 4-year degree? Okay. And think about that. And I'm not meaning to degrade anybody who's got a 4-year degree. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is, it's still your goal is to find a career that you want to go into. Right now, not everybody wants to be a lawyer. Not everybody wants to be an architect, or whatever the case may be. Okay. Some people want to work with their hands. Some people want to get out there and they want to be a mechanic. They want to work with, they want to be an electrician, whatever the case may be. Some people fall into that as well because, family background, their dad was an electrician or a plumber or whatever. But how many people do you also know that went to school, they went to a 4-year degree, or got their 4-year degree or their master's? They're not doing what they went to school for.
I know.
Okay. And that's okay. But they may, and I've heard multiple people that went to a 4-year university, got their degree, and then went back to school to be an electrician, because that's where the jobs are. Okay. Yeah. And I kind of think of it from the perspective of a 4-year degree is not for everybody, and that's okay. Right. And I think even at the K through 12 level, everybody was steering people. You've got to go get a degree. You've got to go get a degree. Well, I think there's a little shift in that now. Sometimes that's not meant for everybody, and that's okay, because now they're also saying, well, listen, we've got this trade school that's also going to the counselors and saying, here's another option, or a different option for a group of people, these kids coming up. And I don't think that was always there in the past.
Right. Yeah, no, and I agree. That was always a frustration, back in the recruiting days. You might have an electrician or a plumber. They don't have their degree, but they've worked in a hospital and they've run their own business. Like, they've worked in a hospital, they've run a business for multiple years, and they know the trade, and they've managed people, and they've managed budgets. And they apply to a hospital for a director role, and they're not qualified. I'm like, and it's.
Well, I think there's a disconnect too, and I love that you brought that up, because this is, I'll share a story that I heard that just makes me shake my head. And it's a disconnect. Okay. It's not pointing fingers at anybody. It's just there's been a disconnect for years. And that's the disconnect between HR and the hiring org or hiring manager. And let me explain that. HR tends to do a cut and paste. This is the job description we've had forever. Well, now you've got other tools though. So they've got AI tools, or they've got other pre-qualifying tools, for lack of a better term, that if you don't check this box, you're disqualified. And I'll use an example. There was a facility director who's in healthcare that I met, and he's actually become a friend. He said, I had a friend of mine who owned his own company that has 30 years experience, right? Does not have a degree though. I told him, apply for the job, call me when you've applied for the job. And that way I'll go to HR, have them pull your resume or pull your application so that I can get you in the interview process. He's not the only person he was going to interview, but he wanted to make sure he was at least in that pool of interviews. Okay. And the guy filled out the application online, uploaded his resume, hit send. 5 seconds later, he got a sorry. Okay. And it was because he didn't check the box of a degree. Well, the hiring manager goes to HR and says, what the heck? Well, he doesn't have a degree. Who said he has to have a degree? This is what the job description says. So I think where people are, I'm starting to hear a shift is I would rather have people that are trainable and teachable than necessarily even the people who have the degree. Yeah. I love that because if you can train people to do the job, you're going to have long-term employees. Okay. Especially if you provide some of those resources to support them. Maybe you help provide some resources for them to go get that certification that they need. But looking at it only from people who check off this box, those days are not going to fill the void, the huge chasm that we have in the need for skilled tradespeople.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost, it's almost like you were in our office this morning because we were talking about that exact thing. We were talking about, like, and I saw it all the time, job descriptions. It's just a cut and a paste. The job descriptions have not advanced with the needs, or sometimes they're just copying and pasting. They're 10 years old, and I'm not blaming HR. They're busy, and these facilities roles, they fall to the margins. They're not sexy. They're not the doctor who's going to bring in money. They're not the nurses, but they're just as important. So we were talking about job descriptions, but then you just touched on AI, and I was going to say, as I said, I listened to our podcast from 2 years ago, and we talked about technology, and the one word we never, or 2 words or acronym that we never mentioned was AI. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about AI. And I was actually going to ask you, and you've just answered it, AI through the hiring process and in resumes, because I really believe you need eyes from somebody who knows. You can't outsource, especially when we don't have enough people. You can't outsource resume yes, no to an AI person to an AI function at this point, because you need to put eyeballs on it, because there are those people who are in those margins who can do the job.
100%. And AI is evolving so quickly. I was the keynote at an IFMA conference down in Phoenix last year, and I kicked it off. It was about AI in the industry and in the facilities industry, and I wanted to get some eyeballs to really open eyes to open when I started, and I basically asked this. I said, raise your hand if you've used ChatGPT in the last year. Virtually every single person raised their hand, a room filled with people, right? I said, keep your hand in the air if you could have said that 5 years ago, and everybody put their hand down. I said, that's how fast our industry is changing with AI. And that was shocking to a lot. And I had probably 20 people come up to me afterwards and said, I never thought of it that way. My perspective on AI is different in facilities. My perspective on AI is, sure, everybody looks at it from the standpoint of predictive maintenance, potentially being helping you to do budgets and understand trends. 100%, 100%. But I look at AI for the field technicians differently. Okay. The field technicians, I see AI working a little bit differently from the standpoint of, say I'm on my phone and I'm looking at a work order. I'm looking at smart technologies, because buildings are getting smarter. Okay. The stuff in the buildings are getting smarter. The things operating the buildings and maintaining the buildings, your air conditioning systems, your electrical systems, even your security systems are all getting smarter. But imagine I've got to go work on something because I got a hot cold call, which is, you get 100 of those a week. Okay. And the building's too hot, or my office is too hot or too cold or whatever. There are a lot of tools, and depending on your system and how modern your system is, you can adjust your temperatures from your phone or whatever. But say something broke, nothing's working. Okay. Now you're going to go work on that HVAC unit. So you click on an HVAC unit, and now AI can potentially make suggestions. Okay. Because keep in mind, AI is not just looking at you, it's looking at the globe. It's looking at everything online. So you click on something and say it's an HVAC unit, and it makes a suggestion that, hey, you know what? That unit has had problems, or that unit had a recall. Or, you know what, that unit uses belt number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or it uses this size filter. Or, you know what, somebody just posted a video about they were having a similar issue. That's where I see AI for the field technicians differently. I see it as making suggestions, or, they're running around like crazy. They're fixing 50 things a day. But rather than them just have to remember that, oh, you know what, I had a problem with this, a year ago or 2 years ago that was similar, or, now somebody reported this unit's making a noise. Well, I may be able to even just voice in and say, hey, has anybody else reported on this unit or this type of unit, this particular noise? And, oh, you know what, there's 5 YouTube videos on somebody recording something similar, and not just reporting that they had something similar. This is what they did to fix it. It was a bearing. It was a motor going out. That's the stuff that I think is going to help field technicians, and AI will be able to help with that, with those predictive things for the guys and gals, the boots on the ground, people in the field. And I think that could be a game changer for these people, because for the field techs, because at the end of the day, depending on if you've got a large campus, it's got 50 buildings, it's impossible for them to remember not only where everything is, but what is it. So I think that's going to be, from a predictive and even a suggestion, for lack of a better term, way that it's going to help field technicians. And I can see that evolving quickly.
Have you seen, and that's a great distinction, because you're right. I mean, if you're in a big hospital campus, staffs are short to begin with. You're looking for people. You can't be, and even if you do zone maintenance, some of these places are so big that you still can't utilize your time well. Have you seen, you travel a lot, you go to a lot of hospitals, have you seen AI deployed in that way yet? Or what are people doing?
I think, and I'm going to oversimplify AI this way. I think everybody has looked up on, and I'll use this example, looked up how to do something on YouTube. Okay. And I look at it as AI is for lack of a better term, let's call that AI light. Okay. Or AI that's been around for a long time. Because think about that. I can type in how to do anything in YouTube, and I'll find 100 videos. I was putting a desk together the other day, and at home, and for whatever reason, the instructions are gone. Okay. I not only found the instructions in 2 seconds, I found videos on, oh, you know what? Make sure you don't screw that screw in too tight because it will strip out.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
How would I know that? I would have known when I screwed it in too tight, right? But again, it's that type of thing that I think's been around for a long time, and everybody has done that, whether it's in their personal life or they've done it at the office. I think that has been around for a long time. I think AI is going to enhance that by providing not just a YouTube link. It's going to provide, maybe it's manufacturer information directly from the manufacturer. Maybe it's a third party part that you can order. I think that's the way AI is going to help field technicians, is make other suggestions just outside of the things that we've used for a long time. But also think of it from this perspective. Okay. You're not always going to be the same guy that goes and works on the thing. Okay. Things don't break on your clock. They break when they break. So imagine, you're the first shift guy that worked on it, but maybe the the third shift guy worked on it, is going to work on it next because it breaks at 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Maybe AI is going to scour your network or scour your system to say, wait a minute, you guys have worked on this thing 15 times. Now, work orders can track that kind of, activity, meaning you've done 15 work orders or 20 work orders on this thing. That's fine. But maybe you don't see the note that Bob put in there that says this thing's about ready to die. Make sure you point this out to the boss because I reported this 6 months ago. AI will be able to pull some of that detail in too.
Do I was just saying, in 2023, we were talking about generational differences, not in terms of AI, but in your travels, do you see generational difference? I mean, listen, stereotypes exist because, well, this one's a real one. A lot of our techs are aging. I mean, you got the young and you got the old, and a lot of the old are leaving. Do you see generational differences in the acceptance of and just willingness to utilize?
100%. I see a shift, and I'll use this example. Every single technician on your team has a smartphone, all of them. I don't even know if you can buy the old analog type phones anymore, but at the end of the day,
I would.
And at the end of the day, everybody's got them, and everybody sees that every application that you use virtually anymore has an AI component. I mean, you see it on your social media networks, you see it on other applications that you use on your phone. I mean, everybody that has a smartphone is at one point probably either use Siri or whatever the Android portion of that is. That's AI. Okay, that is AI. They've been using it for years. I think the acceptance of it has been rapidly increasing. I think the fear that everybody had was it was going to take my job in facilities. The challenge is AI is not going to replace the filter. Okay, it's not going to replace the belt. It's not It's not going to fix the problem. It's going to help you better predict things that might be happening, but it's still going to require somebody to turn a wrench, okay, because it's a mechanical component. But AI will also be able to start helping you better predict those things or see when things are starting to go sideways.
At its core too, it's like a change management issue. And I think sometimes no matter what that change is, and actually we see so many changes in healthcare these days, I think a lot of the times that's either minimized or not acknowledged, that there is a component of change and there is a degree, whatever that degree is, that you have to bring that to the table. Right. Because without it, you can't be successful.
Right. I think, it's a culture shift. It has to be, because, and I think it's top down. It has to be top down driven. It's, sometimes change, and you know how it goes in the industry, change can be hard, but I think when you get past that barrier of everybody thinking that it's going to take my job, or that fear that, fear mongering almost, that, it's this evil thing. Where's AI going to evolve? I don't know. I don't think any of us know, but at the same time, I think I think if we can change the mindset that it's a scary thing to, it's something that can potentially help me or make my life easier or better, that's a win, and I think that's where the industry needs to shift from this mindset of, it's taking jobs to it's going to help the jobs.
Yes, yes. You just mentioned cultural shift, and my guest is David Trask. David is the national director for ARC Facilities. We're coming up to the end, but you mentioned cultural shift, and this really is a cultural shift. You work not only in healthcare facilities, but you work for academic institutions, you work at stadiums. You see a lot of industries across the United States. Coming out of COVID, work from home was huge. Now, in the FM world, it can be difficult to work from home. You got to have eyeballs and sights, but we're 5 years later. Is the culture shifting? And this is across all the industries you work in. What are you seeing as far as coming back to the office for employees?
Yeah, in facilities, obviously it's different because facilities is on site. They're working on site. I think there's the biggest shift with regards to the facility side versus the day-to-day office folks is I've seen a reduction in the number of sites that orgs can tend to have in some cases. Now, schools, it's different. Schools, they're working in some hybrid models still where they're offering online courses. My goodness, I know several people that got their degree, their 4-year degree, never stepped on foot at the school. And it was clear across the country. But I think with regards to the industries, it really depends on the industry too, whether or not they can have that remote potential workforce in the day-to-day outside of facilities. I think people are still trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out what model works. And some of them are doing this hybrid model still where it's part-time outside the office, work from home. The organizations that are pulling people in, I've heard there's been a fall off, meaning they're losing people because they're requiring people to come back in. Others, they embrace it because they want that face-to-face interaction community. I think it really just depends on the organization.
Do you guys have a main office? And obviously you're traveling all over the country, and do you ever go to a main hub, a main office setting for ARC, or?
I'm that remote guy. I'm that remote guy. And what's funny is I've been that remote guy since before it was a thing. I have not.
So everybody joined you.
Yeah. I have not reported to a physical office in about 8 years.
Well, you like it?
Yeah. That painting you see behind me is my house. I love it. So my office, I oftentimes say your office is where the Wi-Fi is. And that's true.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely, it is. Well, David Trask, National Director, ARC Facilities. As always, thank you. I love getting your perspective. You see so much. You can share so much. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Peter.
It's Peter Martin for the Healthcare Facilities Network. As always, thank you for tuning in, and we will be back. See you then.